science team. They're either in process of becoming certified as a community scientist or are involved in one of our citizen science programs. And this picture is exciting for me. This is Cherie Claire. She's one of our community scientists who's becoming a certified marine scientist, community marine scientist. And this is a picture taken at COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh this past year. And this, for me, is what community science is all about, is how do we create access and improve equity in the active participation in science, and also driving and designing the science that then informs policy and ultimately returns and improves quality of life within our respective communities. I want to first start today's conversation about the knowledge economy, and just to make sure that we're all speaking the same language. And I think often for those of us who enter into academia, you don't actually think about you being part of an economic system, but that is what it is, right? We all either paid to get an education or someone paid for us to be educated. And then we all go off. And if you're pursuing the pursuit of like creating knowledge for the desire of adding new information, to being at the vanguard of knowledge and innovation, this is what drives our industries. And so the knowledge economy is really the commodification of knowledge, insights. And often we may not think about the commodification aspect, but I'm sure if you've ever gone to access an article, a scientific article, and you're not using your university library platform, there's a paywall. Sometimes it's $50, $100, $7, whatever it is, there's a cost to access that information. And from a philosophical economic perspective, when we're talking about the knowledge economy, it has this potential to, because if we're constantly innovating, we're constantly creating, we're producing new knowledge, in theory, it creates this opportunity for perpetual financial returns. And I'm going to talk economy first, and then we're going to dive into the science. But the reason why I'm bringing up this notion of the economics of our knowledge, our education, our institutions, is that this is the foundation of a lot of our societies, whether driving development in our society, driving innovation and new opportunities. All of us now probably know about ChatGPT, where if we're not well informed about artificial intelligence, we are at least aware, right, that it exists and that it's impacting our lives, whether we like it or not. And so these are different aspects of how the knowledge economy are driving and influencing how societies develop. And what we're seeing is some of the best firms who are really at the cutting edge of their production, their environments, their ecosystems are much like some of the best schools and institutions. And I bring this up, I was just at the UN Water Conference in New York, and one of my biggest takeaways, which was both insightful and just made me go, was how some people were talking about water. And some people were talking about water as a commodity, right? It was just like, and I quote, "It was oil, now it's water." Right? So, and where a lot of the intersection in industry comes in, as it related to water or the economics of water, was how do we improve our ability to gather insights about water management, so then the water managers can make more informed decisions, reducing leakage, spillage, improving how they're maintaining their water storage facilities, so that you reduce costs, increase profits, and ultimately ensure that there's water access for your respective communities. So these are the conversations that are taking place at the UN level. And the knowledge economy, while all of us, I'm sure most of us on this call are active participants in the knowledge economy, I'm not sure how many of us actually pause to think about the implications of the knowledge that we're creating, and then also how that goes to inform decisions. So this is also one of our community scientists, and the beautiful thing about most of our community scientists is they come from non-traditional academic backgrounds. And as most of us know, our university systems are very insular. And some might even call it sort of like an insular archipelago of knowledge. I bring up archipelago because the Bahamas, if you are not sure exactly where the Bahamas is, this is a map that includes a little bit of Florida and Cuba, and just the Bahamas nestled between the two. Where the little dots are, or the yellow icons, are our research sites in Cat Island. And what we notice, again, talking from an economic perspective, if you have exclusion within the production of knowledge, it stagnates growth of an economy. Now, personally, my anchor is not in economic growth. However, what I do want to see at the end of the day is I want to see increased economic opportunities for Bahamians. And the reason why I even started talking about the knowledge economy, or even sort of thought about that, because when I returned to the Bahamas, I entered an ecosystem that was not conducive for the production of knowledge for many reasons. And so this image on the screen here, it's pretty inappropriate language at the bottom of the first picture. And so I'm not going to read it out loud in full, 9 little N words as seen in the Bahamas. And this is a picture from a book from 1939. I'm showing this with you, and I'm going to read this caption because I think context is really, really important. And it helps for us to understand where we are, where we have come from, and where we get to go. And just for, again, contrast, I believe it was 1833, please correct me, when Oberlin was founded, and 1844 when you would have had your first Black graduate from the university. So I'm now talking about 1939 in the Bahamas. And this is from a book, a caption from the book called A Unicorn in the Bahamas. I only met Napoleon Theophilus Alexander, but he was very engaging. He wanted to be my butler, and he said that all he had got to do to learn the art was to go to the ladyship school, where they can teach you most anything except to make a colored skin white, and only the Lord can do that in heaven, where, of course, we'll all be white. He said he had been married for 3 years, and his eldest child was 5. His wife would be my cook. No, ma'am, she can't cook nothing yet except corn, but she's a smart gal, and she'll learn same as me in the ladyship school. As Lady Dufferin's nurses were in the India hidden behind Purdah walls, so Lady Dundas's school is to New Providence, for it makes the neatest and most effective cooks, housemaids, butlers, and laundresses out of islanders with superb grace of movement and 5 metaphorical thumbs on each willing but unfortunate hand. Before the school began in the dark ages of housekeeping, years ago, it was necessary to import arrogant domestic salvation from the States. If sailors and spongers can be made into those household deities on whom our comfort and content, our appearance, our sleep, and the success of our marriages depend, I'm sure Lady Dundas's domestic school will achieve the transformation. So that, I think, really helps to provide perspective as to what education looked like in the 1930s in the Bahamas, and really it's almost 1940. And so the College of the Bahamas would have been established in the 1970s as a college teacher training institute, and then it was chartered as a university in 2016. So as a nation, our access to education, where we have 90% of our population have at least 90% of our population come from African ancestry, our access to education has not been what it needs to be to really have a flourishing knowledge economy, right? So this is sort of the first thing that needs to be addressed. And what I started to realize as I found myself at the intersection, again, my background is conservation biology and sustainable development. And so as I started to look at how do we address the sustainable development goals, how do we ensure that we have resilient communities that can withstand the realities of the changing climate and so on, well, I think science and data has to be at the heart of that. And so this is often what happens. But when you live in a country that doesn't actually have the skilled expertise in country, what ends up happening is that our governments or the various foreign organizations who are helping to drive development in the country, they bring in consultants, which is awesome, because where there is not technical expertise, we need help, we need support. However, where challenges arise is that when the guidance that's advising our governments and our development projects in country is grounded in science that lacks perspective, then we run the risk of our development solutions not actually solving our problems. And I think this is the predicament that the Bahamas and many countries are in right now, that because the knowledge economy is an insular archipelago, as we talked about before, it limits who has access to it. But often I think what people who are in the ivory towers don't often think about is that the questions that we ask informs the science that we create, right? And so if you're coming in and you're advising us based on your science that's informed by questions that may not have been fully grounded in the reality of our country, and if your research time is based on a couple of weeks a month or a couple of weeks a year even, maybe not even over time. So we've got major gaps in spatiotemporal data throughout small island developing states and least developed countries in Africa. This is one of the greatest inhibitors to sustainable development, is this lack of data. Okay, so how do we address this? And this is sort of really at the heart of where my work comes in, is that I fundamentally believe for us to see true sustainable development, for us to address challenges as it relates to clean water and sanitation, biodiversity loss, climate solutions, there needs to be equity at the heart of it, right? And so what that looks like, I think, has multiple prongs. First off, when we're talking about equity in the knowledge economy, we have to understand that everyone needs to be involved in the conversation. And so this is where, often sometimes when I'm talking to people with PhDs and who are sort of deep in the academic experience, and there's absolutely no contest to the value of producing new knowledge, right? If we're all men and women of leisure and we're just creating for the sake of creating, that's amazing. However, when your creation is now being used to guide the development in my country, and there were biases in how you designed or even the questions that you asked that is driving your research, well, now I'm concerned. And so what we see, maybe the question, well, Nikita, why don't you guys just do your own research, right? Like, just do it. Well, what happens in countries like the Bahamas is that there are barriers to accessing the knowledge economy. So one, what drives research? What funds even research? In countries like the United States, you have National Science Foundation, right? It's a pot of money to support research by American researchers or people who are in and studying in American institutions, right? So there are systems, whether it's progressive taxation or there's endowment from graduates, businesses, or even it's the industry that's funding the research. When I started off studying stromatolites with a geophysicist, and a lot of our research was funded by Shell and sort of the fossil fuel industry, right? So industry funnels research. But if you're in a country where your industry is not being used, or resources from industry, for us as tourism, isn't being redirected into research and innovation, then you don't have resources to apply for funding, right? And so this is what often happens now within the Bahamas, or for researchers Bahamians coming back. And again, this is not exclusive to the Bahamas. This is the Caribbean. This is in many countries in Africa, that we struggle to access the resources, or even, to receive the support. If you are at an institution in the United States, there's a whole department, a finance department, that helps you write your grants, ensures that your grants are completed to the point, especially the financials. There's that due diligence. But where there is struggling, and where the institutional capacity does not exist, right, or is in development, then you don't get that type of support, which makes it that much harder to access the funding dollars to drive your research. And so what it results in is communities, and most Bahamians for a very long time have not been equitable participants in the science-driven economy that exists in our country. And we do have a very robust science-driven economy, but it just has not been, the main players have not been Bahamians, right? Because Bahamas is a biodiversity hotspot, so we have people from universities all over the world, primarily Western universities, who are coming in to do research and to explore and to create knowledge. And then often that knowledge is created and then ends up driving and informing policy. However, when your policy is not grounded in the needs of the community, your policy is not effective. And again, this is the juncture that we are in. So how then do we create equity within the knowledge economy? And I think this is where, this may challenge to some degree some of the elites within the ivory tower that really believe that, science is for us and not for everyone, right? It's an exclusive experience. And this is where I believe that, science is a tool for social justice. Science is a tool for equity. And I think when you are really building an equitable knowledge economy, we have to radically transform what our education looks like. And our education has to be grounded in critical thinking. And this is something that the entire population needs to have access to, not just a handful of people. And I think, and so Nikita, why are you even talking about the knowledge economy in the first place? Okay, so the Bahamas is a tourism dependent economy. So roughly between 50 to 60% of our GDP comes from tourism, right? So tourism, and especially the type of tourism that we have in the Bahamas, creates what I like to call an illusion of prosperity. When tourism is good, people will have access to cash flow, although often that cash flow doesn't enable people to build wealth, right? So I can work as a maid, I can work as a waitress, I'll get my tips. But as far as being able to build generational wealth, being able to bring in a salary that helps me to elevate and improve my quality of life, and therefore then the quality of life of my community, we're not there yet as a country. And this is why I believe that, certified community scientists is a viable pathway and a trade opportunity for Bahamians to, as I say, leapfrog our way into the knowledge economy. Because the reality is that as a nation, as a region, as small island developing states and least developed countries, we need the data to solve our problems, because the climate crisis is real and the threats are felt day by day, and they're compounding and it's complex, right? So we need that data so we can make the most informed decisions. But in reality, we don't have time for everyone in our country to go out, get a PhD, and then come back. Not to mention, there's only 400,000 of us, right? So there has to be more equitable ways to get people involved within the knowledge economy as one, a diversification of our economy, our economy as a country. But then two, I think the knowledge economy is how we improve quality of life for all people. And this really requires increasing access to capital, credit, and technology, right? Because you all know the best institutions in the world have the best technology, right? With the best technology, you can, whether it's you're looking at genetic research or you're looking at core samples, it enables you to create the discoveries and those innovations that keep us at that vanguard, at that level where we are producing new insights that then can either drive these new innovations and or can help to inform how we need to develop as countries, and specifically where I'm focused in is, biodiversity loss, climate solutions, oceans, and that is all grounded in how do we ensure that the masses have access to this type of education. And then this pushes us to, and this again now is coming in from the economics perspective, then how do we radically reinvent the market economy where now we're selling insights, right? Because this is what people are doing now. This is at the cutting edge of knowledge production, is insight so that you can get knowledge-driven decision-making to reduce your costs, right? Your operating costs. Okay, so this is Antonise, and you can see she is a scuba diver and in training to become our certified community marine scientist, and she's on the call with us today. And what we do is how we are going about to cultivate the knowledge economy in the Bahamas is really about training human capital, right? And ensuring that we have the supportive environment that enables innovation and enables learning, and that enables people who may not come from traditional academic backgrounds to feel safe and secure and welcome in a space that is foreign, while they're building the skills that then can be transferred into new economic opportunities. And so that's grounded in capacity building for science, engineering, and innovation, and then institutional capacity building, which I have to say is not what I imagined that I would have to do, but it's where I spend a lot of my time now, is focused on institutional capacity building, because the strength of your institution supports the quality of your science. And so one of the educational offerings that we provide are these global classrooms called the Grouper School. And it's a way to engage people from different parts of the world in science and art and dance, and is also a mechanism to ensure citizen science, or the public participation in science, is a great way for us to fill and address data gaps. However, the challenge in anti-intellectual societies, or societies where education has not been a priority, is that you don't have the political will or just the individual desire and excitement to be involved in a science project. And so we have to find other ways to engage people and to ensure that that activity is maintained over time. And so the Royal Raincatchers project is really where Kristen and I started working together, building out this idea of how do we improve the hydrometric data network in the Bahamas through connecting and building the initial skills, science skills within members in the community, where then we can up-level them into, community science programs like our certified community marine scientist training. And so this is our first cohort of certified community marine scientists that we are working with. And what's wonderful, that after this cohort is trained, that means we actually have real capacity on Cat Island to be able to monitor and understand health of our coral reefs. And so now I'm sure you can see where there's a plethora of spin-offs, not only from economic opportunities, but then also from improving access to employment within our community. And so with that, I will say, Ms. Gadna, I always like to end my talks with a word, an Amharic word. And the reason being is that as people from the African diaspora, we were intentionally cut off from our African ancestry. And I think a big part of us healing and addressing our challenges, whether it has to do with education or even just how we interact with each other, is for us to be grounded in who we are beyond what we've been told we are. And so this is why so much of our work with young marine explorers is now tied to the African continent, because we need to ensure that our community members are being trained and skilled in Western knowledge systems and indigenous knowledge systems, right? Because Western knowledge systems alone will not save us. We have to ensure that our climate solutions and our approaches are grounded in indigenous economics. And when I say indigenous economics, it's when I rise, you rise, right? We're all growing together. And the Community Marine Scientist Program is really grounded in the notion of indigenous economics, where when we all have access to the knowledge economy, we can equitably participate. It means our science is going to be more robust, it will be better, and it will help us help our policy makers make more informed and better decisions that will ultimately result in improved quality of life for all. So with that, it's with great gratitude that I've had this opportunity to share some of my work with you today, and I will